things that don't really fit inside the conformed structure that we have, are the ones that are slowly becoming a majority.
Can you open that door another time?
We could definitely open that door. I mean, like I said, it'll open. I mean, it even becomes fundamentally more complex when you start thinking about Haiti.
Yeah.
You know, this whole political formalization process. Because I mean, I don't know, has the president been? Did they know who's won yet? Has anyone been following the news? This happens right now.
Sweet Mickey.
By the organization of details of transforming a human multiplicity into a disciplinary society, the tools of politicians, and in managing, differentiating, classifying, and hierarchizing all deviances concerning apprenticeship, health, justice, the army, work. These often minuscule ruses of discipline, these minor but flawless mechanisms, draw their efficiency from a relationship between procedures and the space that they redistribute in order to make an operator out of it. Do you guys understand that? By the organization of details of transforming a human multiplicity, all of these different minorities, all these different cultures, all these different kind of people, into a disciplinary, in Brooklyn gezegd, geen groepen kan je dus, society, and of managing, differentiating, classifying, hierarchizing all deviances concerning apprenticeships, also all these aspects are now being organized. We're using these small little tools, these small little details. And he says here, these often minuscule, so they're very small, rules, these instruments of discipline, CCTV, for example, could be one, monitoring, finding you for doing this, these minor but flawless mechanisms, because they don't really achieve what they're set out to achieve, draw their efficiency from a relationship between procedures and the space. So that's where they say, okay, so this is how it should be. So if I want a space to be well used, I put my CCTV camera. And that way, it won't be used in the wrong way. Why is it being used in the wrong way in the first place? He's trying to say. Go to the core and deal with the source of the problem, as opposed to trying to make all those multiplicities become a singularity. Absorb and open yourself to that multiplicity, to that complexity, to that differencing, and try to see how you can incorporate it in your bank's design next time. So you can include these things, both to stimulate potentiality and to confront problems. Because all these other little things are just like, we have an idea how it should be, those managing guys. So they're gonna like, he's walking wrong, fix. He's eating wrong, fix. He's this wrong, fix. So it's all little things that are being used, right?
But that's easier said than done.
Oh, without a doubt. Modernism didn't do it because, first of all, they weren't even, I don't know to what extent they were aware of it or not, but it was, a simplistic one-to-one relationship.
And what's the alternative? Sort of self-organization?
Well, the alternative, of course it's easier said than done, because we live in a world where the most complex thing we have is the world we're part of, namely the urban fabric, which has all these differences and rules and things. It has things of the past, it has people coming from the present, it has cultural diversity, it has different perspectives, it has the future, it has the climate. You can go on forever. So yes, it is harder than done. So does that mean we say it's hard so we don't do it?
Or maybe
Or do we
strive
say
for the ideal?
Or do we?
Yeah,
What is the ideal? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Where does the word ideal come from for you? What is the ideal?
Well, that's something that you politically talk about with each other. Something that you manage.
The ideal is subjective. It's perception.
Yeah.
It's a
It feels to me
perceptual
that
reflection.
your ideal kind of fits into this. So I'm a little bit worried that you guys are going back to the conceivers of an ideal world. And all he's trying to say here is saying, listen guys, stop trying to conceive. Because this was also the ideal. This was the ideal. This is the ideal. This is the ideal. This is the ideal. For all of them, that's the ideal. Point is, he's trying to say that, hold on, there's this thing called, space, and the living of space, and all we're trying to share is for you as spatial practitioners, thinkers, designers, workers, to just click open And what happens next is what happens next. But if you don't click open, you're staying in your cocoon. And you're staying with the worlds that you think, and you frustrate yourself when it doesn't work out the way you conceived. Which brings me to my next slide.
But these things are not to shape people to an ideal, but to prevent them from
Well, there's
hindering
that.
other people, right?
No,
It's
no,
to
no.
protect.
No. You don't know, because he's not saying here what things. There is an ideal. There is an ideal. Switch backs goes when there is discipline is manipulated to these operators that produces.
I'm not sure we have to do this.
Yeah.
Now what I mean, my foot on a bench in a train is not because,
No, but you're going too much into detail here. This is saying like that there's the policy of society, the organization, administration of society is being done by a couple of individuals, starting with politicians, starting with the president, which then are translated, in our case, to those who are making that urban fabric, so architects, urbanists, or economists, or whatever else domains are out there. And we're using that to administer a kind of spatial way of how one uses. But now we have a social fabric, and the spatial fabric was supporting this. But now we got a social fabric that doesn't quite connect that. So what we do is we do as much as we can to put in these little devices to get them to walk properly, to get them to kind of stay in line. And this example is just one, but I'm talking about your whole life here. That you work from 9 to 5. That you do this. The whole system is there. It's running, and it ought to run that way. But is there a way that can we even start to wonder? Can we deal with our problems by saying, well, these problems are all here, so I'm going to try to erase them, or am I going to try to look at the source and say, well, maybe traffic congestion could be resolved by not making more roads or widening the roads? But what happens if I just shift time? What if half starts at 9 and the other half starts at 10? Doesn't I in one go solve something? So it's about how to go and try to trace back to the source of a problem and try to find how you can work with it in a more efficient way. But if you're not opening your mind, you don't even have a chance to access that creativity, because it all is so simplistic and so straightforward for you. So we want to go beyond a superficial way of representing it to going into more, let's say, wider, more difficult, without a doubt, but more fruitful and more challenging and more substantial. Because then we can do fun things. And it's not our ego making the city anymore, but it's like the city is informing itself and informing us, and we're trying to absorb as much as we can within the time that we have. Because at the end of the day, after 10 months, you have to make a design, or you've got to take another year to graduate or whatever. Or as an office, you've got a certain amount of weeks before your client wants a design, politician or private. So you're going to have to make a design. So all you want to do is you want to stay open and include another level of seeing in your thinking, and in your translating, and in your designing. If that statement, what I just said alone, is all you get out of this, is fundamental. The more intricacy and the more clarity and the more depths, you can build that over time. But I can assure you this, that for most of you, for the 30 or 20, however many years you've been alive, have not been trained to open that gaze. Because the bachelor students are being told this. When you go to the master's, you design that. When you graduate, you do that, and then you go and reproduce the same methods we've been doing for the last 100 years. Or you go anti-modernism, or you go postmodernism, or you go something else. The point is there is no other, there is no the one way. If you just start opening a gaze and trying to become more inclusive in your thinking, already there, you've done a big step. So it doesn't have to be postmodernism, anti-modernism, it could be anything. Because each moment will allow you to open your gaze and see what are the processes that are here of influence that I can try to use. And not just see it so superficially and then make a superficial, very simple conclusion out of that and make a simple design out of that that might look really great, but has lacked the acknowledgement of other processes that are taking place that are really influencing the thing. So what those other in-depth things are, that's for us to challenge and to experiment with. So you do it, you carry it out, you see it, and it starts to inform you. That's what information gathering is, and information formation, and then the sort of formation of knowledge is all about. It's about taking things, putting them together, reconstituting them, and from that, starting to see relationships and starting to understand possibilities, and that just helps you inform. So you're not replacing one statistical way of let's say, of analyzing, you're just complementing it with something given the time that you have. All spatial practices correspond in an area where discipline is manipulated to these apparatus that produce a disciplinary space. So disciplinary space, we can also refer to a disciplinary society. If you're not, fine. In the present conjuncture, which is marked by a contradiction between the collective mode of administration, how we're managing, and an individual mode of appropriation, this question is no less important if one admits that the spatial practices in fact secretly structure the determining conditions of social life. So he's pulling it all the way back down now to space. It's a spatial practice that in fact secretly structure the determining conditions of social life. And this is the big challenge of Spinrix. The collective, how do we administer the whole, yet at the same time there's this individual identity mode of appropriation. You know the word appropriation means, to eigenen. So the guys who appropriate the couch, the way she's appropriating the chair right now. Graffiti is also a form of appropriation of some sort. Skateboard.
Could also be a art, but.
Sorry?
No.
So this is the thing, this is the challenge. Because, and maybe this, hold on, maybe I think that we'll get into that.
Boy, heb je een SD-kaart? Hier kan.
All right. So, what do we pull out of this? One, very simple. We have to be careful because I see people walking here. What time do we have this space?
Actually, no.
5.
Oh,
But
okay.
I'm like changing the.
Okay, I'm finishing, guys. I'm finishing. Okay, no change can be made. 4 minutes? Yeah, perfect. It's opening and closing. I need to get out of here. It's my birthday, guys.
And
Okay. No change can be made without the production of an appropriate space. If you want to change something, you got to change the space. New social relationships call for a new space, and vice versa. The social spatial are so fundamentally interdependent and connected.
But is it true? Because that quote says that architects and urbanists have a lot of influence on society.
You better believe it.
But you can't.
That's what the whole lecture is about.
But
We have a fundamental influence
Or
on
you're in
society.
the wrong faculty.
also, if you change the use of a space, the space changes itself. No?
What do you mean change the use of a space?
If a space is used by different groups or different grandmas use a space other than
Yeah, for example.
but it also changes the space. You know?
Yeah, there's definitely like, that's again connects to the previous slide, where he talks about the collective mode of appropriation and the individual mode
Yeah.
of appropriation.
Yeah.
So what he's trying to say here is that if you're dealing now with trying to transform an area because of the way it's working or not working, and you want to do something about it, you want to do something about a society, you want to kind of enhance something, you can't just say, I'm going to change my society. You can't just put in new policies. What they're saying here is that there's no change that can be made without changing its space. You can't just fix people's mind over a space and say you got to think better about it. No, the space itself does things to us. It offers us or limits us or supports us or facilitates us or whatever. So if you want to go beyond that, if you want a different conclusion or a different atmosphere, you're going to have to start, he says here, with the space.
It's not space as the built environment, but the space as the most
Also.
broad term.
Yeah, so he says, I mean, here he's talking, I mean, I'll go here, and this, I think the next lecture should talk about that. I mean, the Russian Revolution was also trying to change society. The reason why the Russian Revolution failed is because it didn't change space. They tried to change the Russian society. I'm not talking about now, I'm talking about, post-First War. They tried to change a society by changing its policy. I mean, I think I might get into that, otherwise the link in the book will go further into that part. Second last slide. If indeed every society produces a space,